Good afternoon, and welcome to the 41st CALLERLAB Convention in Reno, Sparks, Nevada. Today is Monday, April 14th, 2014, and this is the Communicating with Dancers seminar. I am Erin Byars from Sacramento, California, and I'm the moderator of this session. And your panelists are Pattie Henze, and forgive me, you are from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And we have Priscilla Davis, and she is currently from Colbert, Washington, and Miss Janet Olivieri from North Glen, Colorado. Correct? Yay! Now, the title of our panel is Communicating with Dancers, but that really doesn't explain the full scope of what we want to talk about today. What we really want to discuss are situations in which proper and effective communication can turn around a potentially negative situation. And that's what we're going to talk about. Now, as the moderator, I'm really not supposed to talk too much, but I'm going to start the ball rolling with two very wonderful examples that I've experienced in my life, one from square dancing and one that was not from square dancing. And neither one, I am sorry to say, was I brilliant enough to come up with this. The first one was my wonderful husband, Scott Byers. We used to manage a public storage facility, and it was the largest facility in our district. We had all different kinds of renters. We were in the Southern California, LA area, and one of our renters was an extremely large black gentleman. He was a bodyguard to the stars, okay, but he was a big guy. And one day he was down at his unit, and Scott went riding by on a golf cart, and he called them over and he goes, "Those two girls over there are watching me. I think they think I'm trying to steal stuff from them." And Scott went, "Oh, I'm sorry." And he goes, "It's because I'm black." And Scott looked up at him and he went, You're black?" The guy laughed. The girls laughed. It was over. The tension just dissipated. And that could have been a very uncomfortable situation. And that two little words, and it was over. Okay? That's the kind of situation we're talking about. Now, here's another one that I actually had kind of forgotten about, and it came back to me while I was in the last session earlier. Many years ago, I used to work with a caller in Southern California putting on dances. And he had just started this new series of C1 dances, and it was the very first one. And I was trying to get creative with the refreshments and do something a little different from what everyone else had done. So I had provided these, it was like cake and stuff with different cream cheese flavors to put on it. And I'm standing talking to the caller, and one of the dancers came storming up, and he goes, "One of those types of cream cheese has garlic in it." And of course, you know, you're not supposed to have garlic when you're square dancing. And I thought, oh, crud, I did not think of that. So the caller goes, "No problem, I'll handle it." He gets the mic, he goes up to the front, and he goes, "Okay, as you're squaring up this time, I'd like all the dancers who had the cream cheese with garlic to square up on this side of the hall, and all the ones who had cream cheese without garlic square up on this side of the hall." Done. Everybody laughed. Tension gone. Situation over. So that's the kind of thing that we would like to talk about today. Some of the situations we're going to talk about are times when, like the two examples I just gave, where we managed to avert any problems and get past any unpleasantness with just a few words. But we may also talk about some situations where nobody said those calming words and things escalated into something that was unpleasant. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to start with Pattie and Priscilla, who are going to talk a little bit. And of course, we're also going to take questions and comments. And then Janet is going to wrap it up by discussing some information from different classes on communication that she's been through and see what the professionals have to say in regards to what we're going to be talking about. Okay. The other thing I need to remind you all is if you do have a question, we'll be running a microphone out to you. We ask that you would give your name and where you are from before you ask your question or make your comment. Okay? You want to start, Pattie? No, she doesn't. But she's, oh, come on.
Hey, my name is Priscilla Davis, and I'm from Colbert, Washington. And I think this topic has been keeping me up at nights because I didn't sleep last night. So, and I'm sure there's lots and lots of situations, but as you get older, it's hard to remember them, you know. And so, since Erin said I could use something from non-square dancing, I've possibly come up with a couple of situations. I worked for the VA for 30 years, and I was stationed here in Reno for 11 of those years and retired here. And I was in the volunteer service office, the director of that, running the volunteers in the VA. And during that time, you could have up to 300 to 400 volunteers, 30, 40, 50 a day. And as the head honcho, I guess you could say, I was the one that people would come to with problems, whether it was staff or other volunteers or patients. And I just remember one individual, I had just actually arrived here in '95 and didn't know a lot of people, of course. And some of the volunteers kept coming to me and said, "You're going to have to get rid of that volunteer." And I said, "Well, why?" Because I kind of liked him. He was different, you know, but he was unique. And he said, "Well, because he stinks. He does not use deodorant or something." Well, come to find out, he was an individual who was not homeless, but close. And he was a veteran, and he was using the VA, etc. And so I gave it a lot of thought, you know, and not knowing them real well. I called him into the office. I just said, "Well, why don't you come in and talk to me?" His name was Ted. And I think he kind of liked me, you know, because I had not done anything to harm him or say bad things about him or anything. And I liked what he was doing. And I was trying to be pleasant to all the volunteers, get to know them. And so he came in and we just kind of talked about different things. And he actually was quite an artist. So he was drawing some pictures and doing some paintings and stuff. And we talked about that a little bit. And he eventually just gave me one of his paintings, which I still have hanging in my home in Colbert there. But I said, "Ted," I said, "we have a little bit of a problem here. And maybe I can help you, you know, knowing your situation and stuff." I said, "Do you have anywhere to take a shower or take care of yourself? Because you do have a little bit of a body odor." And he says, "I do." I mean, he could not smell it. So he didn't know. And nobody really said things. They might just kind of ignore him. But he'd been around quite a long time and much longer than I had. And he said, "Well, I could use the place to take a shower." And so we worked that out. And I said, "You know, we give deodorant and comfort items to the vets." I said, "Why don't I give you some? And let's see what happens." And I guess he was very grateful, you know, because he thanked me for talking to him and letting him know the situation. And I guess I would say that resolved some things that other volunteers and patients and staff could have said something, which I would have lost him as a great volunteer. I mean, he was really a good one. And that's one thing I thought up. So, you know, hitting it head on and I guess being honest is one thing I'm probably trying to say is, and I would say that with square dancers too, because I'm probably more honest than sometimes maybe I should be in some situations rather than beating around the bush. I kind of say what I want to say without thinking about it and think, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But most of the time, you know, everything comes out good. You have something you came up with?
I think I might have something.
Okay, and then I have one more after that.
You made me think of it, in fact. My name is Pattie Henze. My husband is Paul, and he is chairman of the Caller Coaches Committee. He's been calling for over 30 years, and I do line dancing every night in between his tips. We have an officer-run club, and of course, as you all know, a lot of times the caller doesn't have a lot of say in some of the things that go on. But we had a man a few years ago that I guess you'd just say he was just kind of too touchy-feely. Know what I'm talking about, ladies? And it went on for so long that our ladies were really coming up to us and complaining about it. And I think either Paul or our president spoke to him. And we let it go on for a while until it got to a point where we started losing a couple of dancers. And we were sorry, but we felt like that it was just very important that we ask him not to come back. And we haven't seen him in square dancing at all since. And, maybe somebody has a better solution to that, but that's the way that we handled it.
Yeah, I think I talked about this last year. We gave a similar session last year with different panelists. And I discussed a club that Scott called for many years ago, and the president was this sweet little lady, and she wasn't well. She was a diabetic, but everybody loved her, and it was a small club, so her duties weren't onerous. But her husband liked to do that. As he was promenading, he'd reach around a little far and, a little further than he should have. And I had danced as a single for so long that I just would do this and just move his hand and not worry about it. Well, I forgot that he wasn't just dancing with me. And some of the other ladies, especially the singles, didn't know how to handle what was happening. And if I had said something, if I had opened my mouth, if I had made a point to deal with this problem at the time, it probably could have been handled in a manner that kept the club together. Unfortunately, Scott got transferred. A new caller came in, and he was a newer caller, had no experience with dealing with situations like this. The single lady started complaining. The sweet president, of course, could not believe that her husband would be making inappropriate moves on the single ladies. The club fell apart. It blew up because I did not think. I mean, I've never had trouble with the courage to speak up, but it just didn't occur to me that something that was happening to me was going to happen to somebody who didn't know how to deal with it. And as leaders in the activity, guess what? We're the ones who get to deal with things like that. So, by the way, I want to make one other comment that I meant to say at the beginning and I forgot. It is my understanding that this is the first time that we have had a partners interest session that has been recorded. And we had so much interest in what we presented last year that many people requested that this session be recorded this year and placed with the MP3s that are going out to everybody. And I want to say a big thank you to the EC and those that make those decisions for allowing this session to be recorded. And we'll go back to Priscilla for her next story.
Well, I've been sitting here trying to think of something with square dancing, I guess. This is just kind of a quick one. Doug is a caller, my husband, and we basically were involved in starting a club in Post Falls, Idaho, called the Post Fall Aparts, and it was really a fun club. And he was teaching lessons, and there was a couple there that was having a really hard time. And it finally got to the point where Doug said, I don't think I can teach you. I just don't think I'm the one who can teach you or that you are going to learn this. It's just not coming to you. I think it was really the man. And the gentleman looked him in the eye and he said, I will come back here as a square dancer. I will go find and I will learn to dance. And he did. He actually did come back to a club or come back to our club after he had taken lessons. And that set up for Doug and me to never tell anybody that they will never learn how to dance. I mean, he says, I will never do that again because that gentleman proved him wrong because he did find somebody who was, the guy was able to learn from him. And maybe we could have handled that differently too. Just kept having him come and and keep him there. But he did find it. So I guess it ended up positive, but not with us. And just another quick one. This is more individual. And like I said before, I can say things before I think about it. And in my church, we have a little tiny church, but every October we do what's a fundraiser with making apple dumplings. And if you've never had apple dumplings, they're wonderful. So you can come to Colbert, Washington and see us in October. But we moved back to Green Bluff or Colbert in 2006, which is where my husband was born and raised, and back to our farm. And the church is like half a mile from our house. And so we started going to church. And I wanted to be involved. Since I was retired, now I could have the time. And so I got probably more involved than I want to be involved sometimes. And I ended up being the chair of this whole Apple Festival, which means you do inventory, you buy everything, you keep people in track, you get the volunteers, get them all lined up. And it's 3 weekends in a row. So a lot of work, and get all the vendors and everything. So dealing with some of those vendors can be really tough too. So I have to be really careful what I say to them or they won't come back. But this involves just another individual and myself. And this gentleman, who must be late 70s or 80s, wonderful volunteer, but a crickety old man. And he's not married right now, and he's pretty set in his ways, but he wants to come and help, and he's been part of the church, but he's left our church now, but he comes back. And he will come in early in the morning, and he helps in our kitchen, and he does the dishes, and he keeps the coffee going, I guess you could say, and he sometimes makes the sauce, which we've had to ask him not to do because he burns it, so I had to be real careful now to get that straightened out. But this one particular day, he usually comes on Sunday because his church is on Saturday now, so he'll come on Sunday for us. And by a Sunday, you've had, a long Friday and Saturday and then Sunday, and it's after church. And he went to do something, and I said, "Not now, Chuck. We don't need it now." And he just kind of looks at me, and he says, "Well, if you don't need me, then I'll just leave." I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do now? He's wonderful doing dishes, We really love him to be there. So all I did was I just grabbed him and I hugged him. And I said, "Chuck, I'm really sorry. I did not mean that you shouldn't help. You've got to forgive me for mouthing off sometimes, but we want you to be here." And he calmed down and he says, "Well, I'm sorry too." So we, just between the two of us, we worked it out that way with a nice hug. It was really great.
Sometimes one of the hardest and most difficult things to say in a situation like that is, "I was wrong. The way I approached you was wrong. The way I spoke to you, I could have done a better job. I could have been more diplomatic. I could have been more caring." And to be honest, I think that's what most of our dancers are looking for. They're looking for somebody to care about them. They come to our activity for the exercise and the dancing and the music and whatever, but I think they stay because they find people who care. And that's what makes square dancing as an activity completely different from almost any other type of dancing exercise activity. We're not out there saying, "Oh, my ballroom dancing is going to look better than your ballroom dancing, and I'm going to win this that you're not going to win." And blah. No, it's going to be, we're all going to be together as a family. And sometimes people drift away and they come back because they miss that sense of family and they miss those people who really care about them. And Priscilla's exactly right. Sometimes a hug and a kind word and saying, "Hey, I am so sorry that I said it that way because what I really meant was this." And, it's so easy when you're frustrated and you're busy and you just throw that out, and sometimes you want to pull it right back. So, do you have maybe one more, Patty? And then I'll try and throw it out to the audience. Okay. Does anyone in the audience, because I really want to use Janet to wrap things up. So hold on, let me get the mic out to you. Just fake it like everyone else. I do not know.
But I wanted to make sure it was on. I went, that's different. I may be derailing this, and if I am, okay. My name is Mike Bentley. I am from Pueblo West, Colorado. And my question is that you talked about the time that Doug couldn't teach someone how to square dance. I've had a similar experience. It was tremendously frustrating. The wall in my house still needs to be repaired from me banging my head. How am I going to reach this individual? If there is more information, I'm sure that one of you has gone through a similar circumstance. Do you have any direction or any idea along that line?
Possibly, but unfortunately, that's not really what we're talking about today. But definitely come and talk to us afterwards because, well, I'm just going to say it really quickly. Everybody knows another caller who's a great teacher. And maybe you know 2 or 3 who are great teachers. Call them all. Call them up and say, I've got somebody I can't reach. And I've got this issue, this issue, this issue. And, of course, Scott's big thing, which is find out what the person did for a living. Find out the way their brain works and try to work through that. But ask for help. And I think it would be the same thing if you're in a situation where you don't know how to handle something that came up. Call somebody who you know is good at that. You know, and there are people in this activity who I would trust to say the right thing at the right time. Okay? I have never once heard Mike Seastrom say the wrong thing. Has anybody ever? He says the exact right thing in every situation. And I try to learn from him every time I talk to him. So I saw a hand up in the back.
I'd like to just make a comment on that also. And my name's Janet Olivieri, and I'm from North Glen, Colorado. And we recently had that exact situation. It involved the entire club. We had a huge situation that we needed to diffuse. And so we met one-on-one with the class coordinator and the club presidents. We met one-on-one with the person, and we talked to this person, and we came to an agreement that we would do the first part of the lesson, the first session. It's like a 20-minute session, then a break, and then 20. The first session would be geared for reviewing so he could really learn. And he's now agreed to come back for at least 3 years and take lessons. And the club has agreed with that. But it was a huge, huge, big zit in the club, for lack of a better word, that we had to diffuse. And we did a lot of it on one-on-one with individuals. So, who had the next question?
Hi, I'm Peggy Lee from Pikesville, and I want to address the situation where you had the gentleman that was touchy-feely. And I didn't have that situation exactly, but this one man who was absolutely huge was in the square with me, and whenever he would take my hand, he would put his thumb there and squeeze it hard. I was like, ah! So after the tip, and I knew that he did not know he was doing that. So after the tip, I went up to him and I said, "Excuse me," and I took his hand and I put my hand on top of his hand. And I said, "You are such a big, strong man. I know you are, and you just don't realize that your thumb is crushing my little bones." He was horrified. And from behind him, his wife was standing, but I couldn't see her because of him. And he was, moved forward because she put her elbow in his back, and she says, "I told you that." And I thought, oh, Lord, I've started a marital fight here. But he did not realize it. I said, "Maybe you're nervous or whatever, but you got to watch out where you stick your thumb because it really hurt on real tiny little hands." And every time I ever danced with him after that, he'd take my hand and he'd pat it and he'd say, "Is that good?" I said, "Yes, it is. Thank you very much."
Wonderful. Someone else? Miss Carol.
Carol Wilson from Reno. One of my students, she seemed to be kind of having very strong difficulties, shall we say. And we discovered, I think she knew it, and it took me a while to, I'm sorry, I should have had this formulated before I took the mic. It took me a while to accept what she was saying. I know people learn differently, but with her, we have discovered, she'd say, I need to sit out for a minute. I said, well, let's go over it again. I need to sit out. I let her sit out. She'll watch us. We'll go through the pattern a couple times. She gets back in, and she does a beautiful job. I also find that mini squares help my new dancers an awful lot, because you can teach them, I can teach them, various, even a scoop back or things like that, that when there's all these other people and there's other people helping them, the new dancers they want our praise. They want our acceptance. They want to please us. And if everyone else is pulling them through sometimes, we have to be open and see that too. And
No. And can you just pass it down, because I think Lynn had her hand up, right?
I'm Alan Riggs from Centennial, Colorado. A couple of things on the comment about getting hands crushed. We had I must say, young lady who went through classes for 3 years, never went to a club dance, but came to classes 3 years in a row. She has severe arthritis in her hands. It was visually painful to see someone else take her hands and see her wince or flinch at the barest touch. One solution that we did, we talked at the beginning of every class. We reminded everybody that was there to take care of everybody else in how, to be aware of the type of pressure they were using, not to grip. And one of the other dancers, I think it was the second year that this young lady was coming through the class, went out to her car and brought in a beautiful pair of gloves. And, the kind of gloves that our grandmothers used to wear. I mean, it had beading on it and everything. And she gave this pair of gloves to this dancer to wear while she was dancing as a visual and tactile reminder to take care of her hands. She started class for the 4th time this last fall, and she called us after the second class and said that she could not come back because the arthritis had advanced so badly that even wearing gloves was painful. But that she thanked us for thinking of the gloves because it really helped her enjoy the dancing for at least 3 years. The other thing for, I forgot it. Never mind.
That's right. When you remember, you'll raise your hand. So, do you all kind of get the idea of what we're trying to do here? We're trying to help people recognize a situation that could be explosive and defuse it before anything unpleasant happens. Does that make sense? And sometimes it's just as little as a pat on the shoulder or a kind word. Sometimes a joke is the right thing. Sometimes you need to be sincere. And I am guessing that the situation Priscilla had with the volunteer, part of it was first, before she approached the problem, she showed this person that she cared about them. She set the stage. She said, hey, you're an important person to me, and I want you to be comfortable here, and I think this is going to make things easier. Okay? So anyone else off the top of their head? If not, Janet, you want to go into your part? We're running a little ahead, but I'm sure that we'll have more comments. Oh, wonderful.
Has anyone out there, in regards to your clubs and people in your club or in your lessons, had anyone that was coming to your dance a little tipsy, maybe? I'd like to know how maybe you handled that with being positive rather than negative. Because we had that in Hawaii once, and my husband and the president of the club took care of it, and I don't really remember exactly, but because it was right at the beginning of when I got involved in all this stuff. But I'd like to know some of that.
Does it sound like? Yeah. So I know it happened to us once a long, long time ago, and we spoke to the couple several times and explained that it's just not appropriate to drink before they came dancing, and they were unwilling to stop. And it's the only people that we've ever asked to leave a club, and that was the only reason, because it was more important to them to have the alcohol before dancing. And it did impair their abilities. I actually know a few people who have a glass of wine or a beer. I don't think it's a good idea, but they do, and they dance just fine. But this couple, it was not working for them. So, yeah, I haven't heard a magic pill for that, other than explaining to them a couple times that that's just not how, it's how do I say this? Our activity is a team activity, okay? And everything we do affects the other 7 people on our team. And if you're in a square and you make a mistake, everybody understands, because we all mess up sometimes. But if you walk into that situation impaired, then it's a negative on everyone else on your team, and it didn't have to be that way. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. You came to the dance impaired. So it's just not fair to the other people on the team. At least that's the way I look at it. So, anyone else? Okay. Oh, yay.
Alan Riggs from Centennial, Colorado. I had new class people come up to me at a dance. They were from our class, so they felt very comfortable approaching us. And they said, we were just in a square with 3 other couples, and we were told that we should not have been at that dance because we couldn't dance. Now, I know that they were actually the better dancers of that entire square. I actually asked them to point out who had told them that. The excuse that this other couple gave was that our new class people were making too many mistakes. And I said, just point them out. Don't tell me who they are or anything, just point them out. I then made the very deliberate move to join in their next square. I had removed my badge that said caller's wife, and I squared up with another club member who also knew what I was going to do. And frequently throughout the patter portion of the tip, I deliberately made some mistakes. And this couple actually had the gall to come up to me at the end of the tip and say, you shouldn't be here. You made too many mistakes. Now, granted, they did not realize that I had corrected them more than the number of mistakes that I had made. I laughed every time I made a mistake, every time they made a mistake. But at the end of the tip, my then partner introduced me to them as the caller's wife. And they got this horrified look on their face. And I said, you realize we're here to have fun. This is not a competition to be perfect. I said, it's great to be perfect every now and then, but I make mistakes. And they said, well, how long have you been dancing? And I said, hang on, how long have you been dancing? Because I knew I had danced over twice the number of years that they had. I was coming up on 48 years of dancing, and they had been dancing less than 5. I kind of felt bad about it, but when they found out I was the daughter of a caller, the wife of a caller, and that I taught classes, and yet I was able to laugh at all of the mistakes and still show them that I was having a good time and that their mistakes didn't bother me at all. They sort of left that square a little chastised, and I noticed that they made an effort to dance with that class couple at a later tip, and they gave that class couple a hug after the tip.
Okay, now that's a great story. That is a great story. So you stepped up and you took care of the situation, but you did it in a way that didn't hurt anybody's feelings. It just let them know that, okay, maybe you're being a little harsh and it's time to step back. As, you know, Scott always says, you don't get a PhD in square dancing.
Anybody else?
All right, Janet, why don't you give us some of your material, and then we'll ask for more comments and questions at the end. This is embarrassing, but I really don't know what time we're supposed to stop. Does anyone have their schedule right in front of them? 3:45? Okay, cool. You got lots of time. Sweetie.
Okay, so we have 35 minutes. Oh, I can talk that long. Okay, I have, I've added to my talk since we started this session. My name again is Janet Olivieri from North Glen, Colorado. I have a story also, and I'm going to call this Dancer Bill because I can't really remember what his name was. But Bill would come to our club, our Collar Run club, to dance, and it was a lower level club because most of the people were in their 80s, pushing 90. They were a little slower, but we had a good reputation for making sure that everybody could dance. The callers would send their new students to us to get practice. Then they would go off and dance with these much more energetic, professional type clubs. But we had our core group of people who were there all the time. And Bill would come, and Bill loved to dance. He'd been dancing for 50 years. And Bill's health was getting worse and worse and worse, and he'd end up in the hospital, and we would go see him, and he had heart problems, and he had back problems, and he had all these issues. And there was one night he left the dance, and he almost didn't make it to his car. The security guard at the building had to take him out to his car and tried to talk him into letting us drive him home. No, he wouldn't hear that. So he drove himself to the hospital and was in the hospital for like 2 weeks with heart problems. And then he came back. And we wouldn't let him dance. And we took him aside and we said, Bill, you're falling, you're hurting yourself, you're running the risk of hurting other people, and we would love to have you come and dance. But before we can do that, we need a release from your doctor. We need a written release saying, yes, it's okay for you to come and dance because we really love you. And it was like a family to us. But we don't want you to get hurt, and we don't want you to hurt anyone else. So he stayed for the dance. He watched. And he says, well, I'll just have the doctor call you. And his doctor called us. And we explained the situation. And the doctor says he should not be on the dance floor and would not release him. And so we told Bill this. And we said, until we get that written release, I'm sorry you can't dance. But he always came. We told him, we love you. We want you to be here. And he came. We never charged him. We never charge anybody who doesn't dance. And we let him know that we really cared. And he never did dance again. And he since has passed away. But we wanted to make sure that we were taking care of him, and we wanted to make sure we were taking care of the other dancers. It was a one-on-one situation. So that's my story. And from all the other stories that I heard, I also got some things that I did not have on my list. First of all, the very first story, use humor whenever possible, but be careful not to offend somebody and make them think you're laughing at them. Be honest and kind and gentle when you're discussing things with people. Don't let the situation get out of hand. Address it early. Be positive in your statements, and respect and honor the other person's wishes. So those are the things that I just picked up from the stories that I heard. Now, my portion was going to be on a totally different vein, because I'm a trained customer service person, and I consider myself a customer satisfaction professional. And there are times when things do get out of hand, and people do get angry, and it's not one of these, stories that can have a really quick, happy ending. So I have a set of rules that I was trying to come up with that would diffuse situations and maybe help people when they are talking about things that are happening right then and things that are much bigger that can be handled in a short term. So my first rule is be friendly and professional at all times. As partners, you have a job to do just like the callers, and you represent the caller whenever you're at an activity. And you want to present the caller or yourself in the best light possible. And you want to be approachable, because if you're not approachable, you're never going to hear the problems. Number 2 is attack the issue, not the person. Keep all those names and personalities and things out of the conversation if at all possible. Talk about the grip. And you can do this in a situation. Some of it you can do as just a reminder, guys, these are ladies out here. Treat them like ladies. Don't squish their hands. Make sure your hands are in the appropriate place. Those kind of things. Number 3, be Switzerland. Be neutral and don't take sides. No matter what side you take as a partner or as a caller, it's going to come back to bite you in the butt, because somebody's going to have a different opinion. And it's just better to try and stay neutral. It's the easiest way to diffuse situations. Stay calm and try not to get emotionally involved in whatever the issue is. That's number 4. If you talk softly, don't yell. Try to keep your voice from being angry. Those things, it's hard for somebody to be yelling and screaming at you when I understand, and you're being calm. Number 5, ask open-end questions so that you can get the whole story, not just, I'm so angry because of this and this and this. It's like, okay, but tell me exactly what happened. Ask those open-end questions so you have a full understanding of what it is that they're asking you to fix. And use empathy. Tell them, I understand what you're saying, and I will see what I can do or find out. You don't want to agree with them, you don't want to disagree with them, but you want them to know that you understand, you're hearing them, and you're understanding what they are saying. Number 7, this one's really hard for me. Keep your opinions to yourself. Remember that whatever you say is a direct reflection on you or your caller, and you don't want to give a bad impression. The callers have a job to do. They want to be hired, and You don't want them to get the reputation either from themselves or from their partners that they are not the professional entertainer that everybody loves and wants. Number 8, if necessary, get help to resolve the issue. I heard that out here on the floor. You may not have the answers, and if you need to get the caller involved, do that. But don't do it at the dance, because he's there to do a job and to entertain people, and you don't want to be distracting him. Ask yourself, can this be resolved tomorrow? If it's something that involves that dance that night, absolutely talk to the partner, your caller on the break. But if not, tell them, whoever you're talking to, I will look into this and I will get back to you as soon as possible. And then if you do make that commitment, number 9 is make sure you follow up on your commitments. If you tell somebody you're going to do something, do it. And then let that person know what it is you did and what the results were. And if it's going to take you a long time, more than a week, call the person, tell them you're still working on it and you haven't forgotten them. They will respect that more than if they think, well, I told this person, I told you to fix this and you said you would and you didn't. And of course, everybody has to vent. I vent a lot. And my husband vents a lot. And he's a caller. But we vent to each other when no one else is around. We do it at home. And it's done. We vent and put it behind us. I also keep a journal because sometimes I have to vent about him. And I write in my journal.
That's what other partners are for.
I have several of these books that are full. And the last thing that I want to say, just in summary, is don't forget the golden rule. The whole thing comes down to treat other people the way you want to be treated, and you'll never go wrong. And my mother-in-law had a favorite saying that was on her wall that said, no university ever gave a diploma in common sense. So if you use common sense and you treat others the way you want to be treated, you'll be fine.
All right. Any comments on what Janet had to say? Because I actually thought of another story, and I probably shouldn't tell this one, especially on the tape, but I'm going to tell it anyway. And no, this is a situation where I was virtuous, and I was so tempted. I was so tempted to be. I'm not going to use that word that starts with a B, but to let some of my inner aggravation come out, and I didn't, and it actually worked in my favor. A couple of years ago, at one of our square dance clubs, they asked me to teach a round dance class before the square dancing. So for an hour before the square dancing, people would come in to learn rounds. Now, I suggested to the club that they take a percentage of what was charged at the door, and they insisted, no, you get all that money. And I'm like, no, you guys should keep some. They said, no, we're fine. You get all the money. So, okay. Now, this particular club, at that time, we had a lot of teenage participation. And we usually brought a car full of teenagers with us. So we would drive, it was over an hour to the club with a car full of kids, and they came and they participated in the entire evening. The couple that was treasurer that year didn't like kids very much. Yeah, and they were not shy about letting us know how they felt about the kids being there. One night, the wife of the couple comes up to me after the round dance class to give me my money. And as she hands me my money, she says, Jared didn't pay for the round dancing. Well, Jared's one of our kids. He's one of our cousins. He came with us. And she's like, he didn't pay. So I took the money in my hand, and I took $2, which is what the round dance class cost, and I handed it back to her. And she looked at me, and she looked at the $2 in her hand, and she looked at me and very slowly handed it back to me because I got all the money for the round dance. I could have come all unglued and said, well, Jared came with us and he doesn't have to pay me, but I didn't. You know, I handled it the virtuous way, and I know maybe she felt kind of dumb, but I didn't say anything wrong, and I was very polite and very respectful, and it still got the point across. So sometimes saying less is better than saying more. So any other situations that this is bringing to mind? I know you all have things in your mind, and you just maybe are not thrilled about talking on the microphone. Ah, there's one right there. And thank you, Janet, for being our runner with the microphone today.
I've been hesitant about talking. My name is Art Parks. I'm from 9 Mile Falls, Washington. I was hesitant to bring this up because I'm not sure I'm entirely right, and so I will leave myself open to comments either way. This comes from a time when I was a club president, and in most ways I was a successful club president. But there was an incident that arose on one evening where I had the club member who was the social chairman of the club approached me and asked if she could set up a table outside the dance room, and she had a fundraiser or something for her kid. I mean, it was something from the school or something like that, and she was wanting to sell these wares out there, whatever they were. I don't know if it was candy or what. And I thought, well, she's not going to be very successful, so I'm not going to say no. and so I said, go ahead and you can do that. All right. It was at the dance. I mean, it was at the dance she asked. At the beginning, she'd showed up early. All right. So she's out there selling whatever it was. And this other club member approached me and said, and this club member was somebody who was a very involved club member. Anything that went wrong in planning or something like that, she always rose to the occasion, stepped in and filled the breach and saved the day. She was that kind of a club member. She came up to me and said, what is this? Somebody selling stuff outside the door. And so now this is my questionable solution, perhaps. I said to her, look, and I explained, I don't think she's going to be very successful for openers, but supposing it was you that came up to me and asked if you could set up a table out there, I said, I'd better think long and hard before I say no to you. And she got set back on her heels a bit, and that was the end of that issue. She went away, and the lady was unsuccessful. We didn't see her set up a table ever again. Now, maybe I was just lucky, but I'm questioning now, thinking about that conflict that I dealt with as the club president. But that's what I did, and there it is, for whatever it's worth.
The one thing that I failed at, back when I was in college, I took a class in, it was psychology of business. And they'd present a scenario, and then you were supposed to say how you would solve it. And I failed almost every time because I came up with what I thought was a beautiful solution, but it never took into account what kind of precedent I would be setting for the future. And I learned a hard lesson from that there are many times, like in a situation like this, you've got the lady setting up a table to sell stuff, that for her child or whatever, then the next week is another dancer going to come up and want to do that, and pretty soon somebody's selling something for their own personal gain. And so sometimes we have to think about those situations. And again, I never did when I needed to, so I try now to always think about, okay, am I starting something that I'm not going to know how to stop later on? So occasionally we have to think about not this one situation, but what's going to happen next week when the next person wants to do it and the person after that. Pretty soon you're going to have Mary Kay and Avon and everybody else, and you're going to look more like a flea market than a square dance. So, but there is one solution, take one night out of the year and have a big event where everybody brings their stuff. And set up all the tables and let everybody sell their stuff, and then nobody's getting favorite treatment and nobody's getting denied. So, but thank you very much. Boy, we're all so good. We still have. Oh, sorry. I know that mic was good. You didn't see it. Yeah, it's because it's on its side. See, it's not standing out.
Don't tell Mike.
Actually, that's one of the rules of Partners Committee. We actually have had a few sessions, a couple of years where we closed the door and nothing that we spoke about left the room.
Yeah, but Mike Bentley is a caller, so.
There's a few guys with the white ribbon on there and ladies as well. So we have a few. I was going to say infiltrators, but no. Let's just say people from the dark side. Oh. No, actually, we welcome callers. And honestly, when we gave this session last year, it was a caller, a very well-known caller, who wrote most of the calls on the plus list, who suggested that we do the session again. So it was probably because of him that we were able to do this. Miss Priscilla has something else.
It's probably not a situation we have encountered it. And we have a lot of single dancers, and many of them are women. And for some reason, they don't. And nowadays, the women can go ask a man to dance, right? I do it all the time. But some don't. And then they go stand in a square and raise their hand like this. It shocked me the first time I saw it. And it happened at one of my husband's dances the first time I saw it. And she looked at him and said, get me a partner. And he says, you want me to get you a partner? He says, I'm the caller. You get a partner, because he does actually refuse to do that. Eventually, somebody usually will come and dance with that. But have any of you encountered that and worked with it and got a positive out of it?
Actually, let me say where that came from first. It was something that started in the gay square dance groups. But I have to say, my husband's clubs train people to do that. But yeah, however, we probably should make it clear to those people that not everywhere you go recognizes that practice. Not that it's negative, but it's not common everywhere. So go ahead, Alyn.
All right, Alan Riggs from Centennial, Colorado. We have a particular dancer that was very forceful in that behavior, that she would go out into a square and hold up her finger, I need a partner. There were a lot of other extenuating circumstances, and nobody wanted to dance with her. She pulled this several times at a class that she was attending as an angel with Bob's classes. And Bob actually started talking about the ethics or the politeness, the manners at which you should attend a dance. And if you were a single dancer, he would, and so the other dancers would also appreciate the fact that you asked someone to be your partner before the tip. In other words, before the end of the round dance, if you didn't have a partner, you were not to be out on the floor. And the last time that this woman was at one of Bob's dances, she stood out and took the place of essentially an entire couple that was a class couple. And she would not leave the square when the class couple approached the square to fill the spot. To diffuse that situation, I jumped up and became her partner. Again, that was the last time she attended one of Bob's classes or dances because, well, again, there were a lot of other extenuating circumstances, and she cussed me out during the square because she didn't want to dance with another woman. She wanted to dance with a man. There were no men angels available. But she, we talked to her after that tip. She left the dance early. She was very, very angry. We heard lots of other things shortly thereafter. But it became apparent to us that we had to start thinking about teaching how to ask someone to dance with the single dancers. It's not the caller's responsibility to get you a partner. It is your responsibility. If you want to dance, you can probably, ask. There's no reason why you can't ask and be polite and be nice, whatever. And we do actually talk about it during our classes and at our clubs. It's a little more touchy to talk about that kind of stuff when you're the guest caller at a club that you are not really familiar with. But occasionally, when we see it happen now, and it's obvious that those who are sitting out are reluctant to get out to fill in that one spot. If I'm not dancing, I'll be the first one up there because I feel like I should be the last one on the floor. And if other people need to sit out or don't want to dance with that person, I'll go fill in whatever spot they need. But then Bob will mention something about the manners in which we need to be reminded, unfortunately. And because our classes now are 20 weeks, maybe, instead of 40 to 48 weeks like they were when I was little, where we taught manners and how to be nice to each other. We're missing that in today's classes and in our general society. So one way to alleviate that problem would be to start talking about it.
Yeah, teaching courtesy kind of went the way of teaching styling. No one has time to teach styling anymore. And it's a shame, because one of the things I was thinking about when Peggy was talking is we tell the gentleman not to be rough. So they go completely the other direction, and you get a hand that's like Casper the Friendly Ghost. You don't even know he's there. Yeah. And, well, I've danced with some guys in round and square that it's like they didn't even exist. And I'm reaching out going, are you there? Is there a human there? So, trying to find that medium between a nice lead and a firm tension on the arm, allowing the woman to pull herself through some of the moves, especially roll away. It's impossible for a woman to do a roll away when the man's got jello arms. Just can't be done, So, but we don't have time anymore in our classes. Are you Mr. Jello Arms? Mr. Jello Arms. That's your new nickname, dear. Okay. You're welcome. And so trying to find that happy medium between a gentleman that's too rough and that's going to hurt you, and a gentleman who doesn't give you any support or tension with which to work. So how do we have time to do that, to teach that, when we're trying to get through all the calls in a short period of time? So, but I'm sorry, that's not the topic. I knew I'd waver. Carol had her hand up.
Carol Wilson from Reno. It sort of is the same topic, because you're talking about diffusing a potential problem. Unfortunately, you as partners, although you carry a lot of weight, I don't have one, so I'm in another situation. But there are a lot of our ladies that are older, that are not as outspoken as I am, and they refuse to ask a man, but they would not get in a square either without a man, without a partner. We also have a couple of men that think, well, I'm here to help and I want a partner. And we had one go so far, I'm sorry to say, that I need a woman out here. The president walked up to him and said, you will not say that again. That was the case where the president stepped in right away. And because that is uncalled for. There you go again with the etiquette and the things. But I try, and I imagine Bob does too, try to teach right in the beginning. I say, when you're learning, we want all the students in the square first. And I will not, I hesitate to ask an angel to step out so that so-and-so can come in. Even the other dancers are now doing that and say, well, so-and-so needs, I'll step out, you come in, you need to be in here. But before too many weeks, and I remind them periodically too, you are in lessons right now. You are the prime concern. We want you to have fun. We want you to learn everything. But when you go out into the dance world, these people you're dancing with have partners. And the best thing for you to do, especially when we're going to be going to a hoedown, and I caution them again, and I say, girls, because it's mostly the ladies, I'll say, go up to, if you see a couple, go up to and ask the lady if you could possibly have one tip with her partner. I say, don't say husband, say partner. You get yourself in other trouble that way. And usually one tip, fine. They don't think you're out hustling for their husbands.
Can I tell you a secret? What I used to do, I started dancing at 13 years old, and I danced as a single until I got married at 29 years old. And whenever somebody's husband or regular partner would come and ask me to dance, at the end of that tip, I would go beeline to their partner and thank them for letting me dance with their gentleman. And occasionally I dance with a girl and I thank the guy. So, but the point being is I'm saying to them, I recognize that this is your fella. And I have no designs on your fella. I know that he's yours. So, yeah. And once I do that, then they understand. Chris. Absolutely. By the way, I did fail one time. I was dancing in a square and a guy wasn't coming where I wanted him to. And without thinking, I whistled and I went whoosh, over. And I went, Wrong decision.
Chris Day from Manchester, England. Do you have a lot of ladies that dance the man's part from day one, or do they expect to dance lady the whole of the time?
I think it depends on the area.
We have
some clubs that do and some clubs that don't.
Yeah, because you have split clubs, singles and gay clubs and whatever. We don't have that at home. So if you get a lot of ladies, we very rarely get men or couples and a lot of ladies. Therefore, we say from day one, what are you dancing? I will dance the man's part. Fine. And they'll do lessons. And it's great when you want for angels or anything for extra things or dances, because they're automatically in a square. You don't have to look for a partner, someone's partner. And I dance the man full time.
Yeah, Scott recommends if someone when they come to class, whatever part they decide to dance, they should dance that part through their first class without switching off too much. And then after that, if they want to learn the other part, absolutely do it. It'll make you a better dancer. But through the first class, he encourages them to stick with one sex or the other. Linda.
Hi, Linda Cutis from Vacaville, California. I kind of have a question on that. We had a couple ladies that came every week, and being that we are in a community that has gay lesbian dancing, I didn't want to discourage them to dance together if that's what they wanted to do. So gently after a tip, I kind of asked one of the ladies individually by ourselves if she would prefer to dance with her friend, and that wasn't going to be a problem. But after I said it, I wasn't sure if I insulted her or not, because she says, oh, no, definitely not. So would there have been a better way of asking that question?
I can't think of one. Patty, you want to comment on that?
It sounds like the right way to go to me. I don't know how else you would have worded it.
I wasn't sure, because she felt awkward, and then I felt really awkward. So I wasn't sure if I approached it right.
Yeah, I can't think of how else. I can't think of how else she would. So, anybody else? Somebody we haven't heard from. There are a couple people in. We have 1 minute. 1 minute. All right. Guys, this has been a wonderful session. I know part of it's been a little impromptu, but whenever you talk about conversation, that's how conversations happen. And I think we showed a lot of really great examples on what to do and a few examples on things that maybe weren't so wise, but hopefully we learned from the situation. And we know that next time we'll do a little bit better job. So I want you to thank, please, our panelists, Ms. Janet Olivieri, Ms. Priscilla Davis, Ms. Pattie Henze. And thank you all, every single one, for joining us today.
Thank you, Erin.